Did you know a friendly highway worker was secretly one of America's most terrifying killers? Edmund Kemper stood 6 feet 9 inches tall and worked for the California Department of Transportation in 1972. Everyone knew him as a gentle giant with a warm smile. But he had a dark secret. He would pick up young female hitchhikers, then drive them to remote locations. After shooting them, he would take their bodies home and cut off their heads. He kept these heads as trophies, talking to them for hours. Meanwhile, he fooled police in multiple interviews while actively hunting new victims. His intelligence made him nearly impossible to catch. After killing his own mother, he calmly called police and confessed to everything. No remorse, just cold calculation. The co-ed killer had claimed 10 lives. Did you know the US Army used its own soldiers as human test subjects for chemical weapons? From 1955 to 1975, 7,000 American soldiers volunteered for what they thought was harmless medical research at Edgewood Arsenal. Instead, they were locked in gas chambers and exposed to deadly nerve agents. Scientists watched through windows as soldiers were poisoned with VX gas, mustard gas, and LSD. The men lost control of their bodies, suffered chemical burns, and developed permanent brain damage. Many couldn't breathe as their lungs filled with fluid. For decades, the Pentagon covered it up and denied medical care to the dying veterans. The government sacrificed its own people to perfect weapons of war. Did you know millions of children were unknowingly exposed to deadly radiation while shoe shopping? From the 1930s to 1970s, shoe stores featured X-ray machines called fluoroscopes. Kids would stick their feet inside and see their bones glowing green through new shoes. It seemed like harmless fun, but these machines blasted intense radiation with every use. Children used them multiple times per visit, while store employees operated them daily for decades. The salespeople started developing severe burns on their hands and feet. Some lost limbs to radiation poisoning, others died from bone cancer, but manufacturers knew the dangers and kept selling to families anyway. For 40 years, they covered up one of America's worst radiation disasters. Did you know Germany's most feared killer lived as an ordinary married man by day? Peter Curtin worked in a Dusseldorf factory in 1929, appearing completely normal to his neighbors. But after dark, he became something else entirely. He stalked the industrial streets, hunting women and children with calculated precision. His method was always the same, strangling victims with his bare hands. What made him truly terrifying was his complete calmness about it. Police launched the largest manhunt in German history, but he kept killing. He drank his victims' blood and felt no guilt whatsoever. When his own wife finally turned him in, he confessed to every murder. He described each killing in chilling detail, showing zero remorse. They called him the vampire of Dusseldorf, pure evil hiding behind an ordinary face. Did you know a former spy was murdered with one of the deadliest substances on Earth? Alexander Litvinenko was living quietly in London, investigating Russian crimes from exile. On November 1st, 2006, he met 2 Russian agents at the Millennium Hotel for tea. What he didn't know was that his cup contained polonium-210, a radioactive poison. Within hours, his hair started falling out in clumps. His immune system collapsed completely. For 23 days, his organs shut down one by one. Doctors were baffled by his mysterious illness. The radioactive trail contaminated half of London, requiring massive cleanup operations. On his deathbed, barely recognizable, he accused Putin of ordering his assassination. One sip of tea became the perfect murder weapon. Did you know a glowing powder killed a 4-year-old girl and contaminated an entire city? In 1987, 2 scrap dealers in Goiânia, Brazil found an abandoned medical machine. Inside was cesium-137, a radioactive substance that glowed beautiful blue. The Alves family was fascinated by this mysterious powder. They shared it with neighbors, even rubbed it on their skin like makeup. Children played with it, mesmerized by its otherworldly glow. Within days, people started getting sick. Skin blistered, hair fell out. 4-year-old Lida Dasnev was the first to die from radiation poisoning. Her tiny body was so contaminated it required a lead-lined coffin. Medical waste negligence had created Brazil's worst nuclear disaster. 249 people were contaminated. Entire city blocks had to be demolished, all because someone threw away radioactive material like garbage. One man's carelessness became a nightmare that lasted generations. Did you know the US military sprayed 20 million gallons of poison across Vietnam and called it routine jungle clearing? Operation Ranch Hand began in 1962 as simple defoliation missions. Strip away enemy cover, they said. Make the jungle transparent. But Agent Orange contained dioxin, one of the most toxic chemicals ever created. For 9 years, C-123 aircraft dumped this poison across South Vietnam. Soldiers walked through contaminated areas daily, breathing the mist. Years later, veterans developed rare cancers at alarming rates. Then came the true horror: Vietnamese children born without limbs, severe mental disabilities, spina bifida, genetic damage spanning generations. Chemical companies knew the dangers but kept producing it anyway. 50 years later, deformed children are still being born, a legacy of suffering that continues today. Did you know Japan ran a fake water purification unit that was actually a human experimentation factory? In 1937, Unit 731 was established in occupied Manchuria under Dr. Shiro Ishii. But they weren't purifying water. They were testing biological weapons on living prisoners. Chinese civilians, Soviet soldiers, and Korean prisoners were locked in freezing chambers to study frostbite. Others were injected with plague, anthrax, and cholera while doctors recorded their deaths. The worst part? They performed surgery on conscious victims without anesthesia, removing organs while people were still alive. Over 10,000 people died in these experiments. After the war, America gave these war criminals immunity in exchange for their research data. None of them ever faced justice. Did you know a computer glitch turned a medical device into a killing machine? In 1985, the Radioactive was the most advanced radiation therapy machine ever built. Hospitals trusted it completely to treat cancer patients with precise doses of radiation. But a hidden software bug was waiting to strike. When technicians typed commands too quickly, the machine would malfunction silently. Instead of healing doses, it delivered radiation 100 times stronger than intended. Patients felt intense burning sensations as their skin cooked from the inside. Doctors dismissed the computer error messages as false alarms. 6 people died horrible deaths from radiation poisoning across different hospitals. The manufacturer tried to cover it up for months. A simple coding error had created a medical nightmare. Did you know people once gathered to watch what they thought was a beautiful light show, not knowing it would kill them? April 26, 1986. Reactor 4 at Chernobyl was running a routine safety test during the night shift. At 1:23 a.m., the reactor exploded with the force of 400 Hiroshima bombs. Soviet authorities denied any danger, so locals climbed onto a nearby railway bridge to watch the mesmerizing blue glow. They called it the Bridge of Death. Within weeks, those spectators began dying from radiation poisoning. But the real horror came with the cleanup crews. 600,000 liquidators were sent in with almost no protection. Their skin peeled off in sheets. They vomited blood daily. Their bodies literally dissolved from the inside out. Most died within months, but their sacrifice prevented a global catastrophe. The bridge still stands today, a monument to invisible death. Did you know the Soviets murdered 22,000 Polish officers and buried the truth for decades? In 1939, when the Red Army invaded Poland, they captured thousands of military officers and intellectuals. These men believed they were being relocated to safety camps. They wrote letters home, completely unaware of their fate. Instead, the NKVD transported them to remote forests near Katyn. There, Soviet executioners used German weapons to frame the Nazis for what came next. Each prisoner had their hands tied behind their back with wire, a single bullet to the base of the skull. One by one, for weeks. In 1943, German forces discovered the mass graves, bodies perfectly preserved in the cold earth, still wearing their uniforms. The evidence was undeniable, but Stalin denied it for 50 years. This wasn't random killing. It was calculated elimination of Poland's future leaders. The truth finally emerged only after the Soviet Union collapsed. Did you know a Nazi war criminal lived freely for 40 years while his victims' families searched for justice? Klaus Barbie started as an ordinary law student in Germany during the 1930s, but by 1942, he had transformed into the SS officer known as the Butcher of Lyon. He turned Hotel Terminus into his personal torture chamber in occupied France. Electric shocks, water torture, and brutal interrogations became his daily routine. His most horrific act was deporting 44 Jewish children from an orphanage straight to Auschwitz. When the war ended, the CIA secretly helped him escape to Bolivia through underground Nazi networks. For decades, he lived under a new identity while families hunted for answers. It took 40 years before he was finally dragged back to face trial. Justice delayed, but never forgotten. Did you know 900 people died in minutes because they believed they were building paradise? In 1978, Jim Jones convinced his followers to create a utopian community in the jungles of Guyana. He promised racial equality and freedom from oppression. But behind the facade, Jones was rehearsing mass suicide with fake poison drills called White Nights. When Congressman Leo Ryan arrived to investigate, Jones knew it was over. On November 18th, he ordered everyone to drink cyanide-laced Flavor Aid. Parents were forced to inject the poison into their own children's mouths. The audio recordings captured 918 people dying as Jones calmly directed the massacre. His final act was a gunshot to his own head. Did you know one man became so deadly that an entire army feared his name? Simo Häyhä was just a quiet Finnish farmer until the Soviets invaded in 1939. Armed with only a basic rifle, he disappeared into the frozen wilderness. For 100 days, he hunted Soviet soldiers in -40-degree weather. He ate snow to hide his breath and refused scopes to avoid detection. The terrified enemy called him the White Death. They sent counter-snipers, used artillery, even bombed entire forests trying to kill him. Nothing worked. Then a Soviet explosive bullet tore through his face, shattering his jaw completely. He kept fighting. By war's end, over 500 confirmed kills, 1 farmer, 1 rifle, pure terror. Did you know a routine flight became one of the deadliest Cold War tragedies? On September 1st, 1983, Korean Air Flight 007 departed New York for Seoul with 269 passengers aboard, including U.S. Congressman Lawrence McDonald. A navigation error sent the Boeing 747 deep into forbidden Soviet airspace. Soviet fighter jets scrambled to intercept what they believed was a spy plane. Radio intercepts revealed confusion among pilots about the aircraft's true identity, but the order came anyway. Fire. The missile struck without warning as passengers slept peacefully. For 6 terrifying minutes, the plane spiraled toward the ocean. Passengers experienced explosive decompression and pure terror. All 269 souls perished in the dark Pacific waters. The Soviets covered it up, claiming it was an American spy mission. Innocent civilians became casualties of Cold War paranoia.